Hi, welcome to One Trick Luxem, and this is my deck profile for the Fire Serene Luxem deck list in the early Distorted Reflections meta. So I've gotten first in the last 3 locals I've attended. I'm not a terribly competitive player, but I have been seeing some success with this build. Luxem in general is doing very well in the early meta for Distorted Reflection, so I thought I'd share my list with you and kind of give a primer to newer players on how to play the deck, what to look for, and generally what the purpose is for each and every card in the deck itself. So without further ado, let's just get right into it. So let's start with the material deck. 12 card material deck as usual. We'll start off with our Serene Spirit of Fire, Zander 1, 2, and 3. So the Spirit of Serene Fire is the only spirit we'll ever run. The Glimpse helps us see Dungeon Guide faster. The fast speed activation of the heal helps us keep us at 20. So in certain matchups, I kind of think of my matchups as, am I going to get bursted down in a combo, or am I going to get pinged to death by a bunch of allies? If you're in an ally matchup, and you know that your opponent does not have a meaningful way to deal 10 plus damage in one turn easily, what you can do is you can just take some additional damage, hold up a fog in case they surprise you with a go wide strategy on their turn, take somewhere closer to 20, and when they go for game, you take a little bit of damage, and then you fog the rest of their damage, and you might even Serene Spirit yourself down to 20. At which point you can go to your turn, make Chalice of Blood, and then be able to hit a threshold, whether it's 8 cards for your full Striking Illuminance Lightweaver's Assault package combo, or 10 cards for a double Lightweaver's Assault on the stack. Being able to hit 20 consistently and threaten lethal on the crackback is very, very difficult for certain decks to crack through. So having Serene Spirit of Fire into Zander 1 makes your early game really strong. Unlike other champions where they only have that 19 health stat, you actually have closer to 25 right off the bat, because if you're up against an aggressive list and they're trying to burst you down while you're both level 1, they have to get through 19 and an additional heal 6. So when you're being pressured very strongly in the early game, just having access to Serene Spirit of Fire means that you'll be able to live longer than other level 3 decks. I'll keep this for later. Deft Executor is crucial in order to go neutral. It also allows you to recycle certain cards that you'll need to see in certain matchups. Now that we are running the Rile Specter package, we don't have access easily to things like Thieving Cut or Planted Explosives. Even if we're running them, we're only running maybe 1 to 3 copies of Thieving Cut and maybe 1 to 2 copies of Planted Explosive. But if you see a matchup where you really want to resolve multiple Thieving Cuts, having access to Deft Executor means that you can actually resolve a Thieving Cut and then bring it back, resolve it again, and then that way you're able to clear the board while leveling efficiently. So having access to level 2 for that, to recur your Thieving Cut, to recur your Planted Explosives, and also to just go through your Juggle Knives really quickly for more dig is crucial. Zander Deft Executor, when you resolve the effect to actually recur an assassin's skill, means that you're not actually going 2 influence down to level up. You're actually only going 1 influence down. Zander Blinding Steel, there's not really much to say about this. This is kind of the heart and soul of our deck. Being able to just reveal our Luxem turn after turn after turn means that against a lot of matchups, if they can't burst us down, we can just outgrind them and win on the stack at a later point in the game. So nothing too crazy to say about that particular package. Chalice of Blood has come in and out of deck lists. I think it's crucial right now because it allows us to kind of race any strategy that wants to burst us down. I'm not very scared going into a lot of matchups where I know I have the interaction to deal with their onslaught of damage, when I know that if they just hit me a little bit further than they would like, but not far enough to actually kill me, I can just kill them on the crackback with Chalice of Blood. And knowing that I have that option means that even if I have a 6-card hand, by the time I resolve Chalice of Blood, that turn I might have 8 or even 10 after I resolve effects. Backup Charger is a staple in almost all modern deck lists at this point, and we are running a turbocharge package with the power cell that the Backup Charger gives you. Really not much to say about Backup Charger. It's probably one of the most universal regalia in the game. In fact, it's so universal that I am running one Portentous Tengu. It does the same thing as Backup Charger. It's not as strong because it doesn't give us a power cell. The power cell is interesting because you can actually sacrifice the power cell and target your opponent's allies on your turn if you want to just put a card down. You can use the power cell in other ways. Water can factor as a power cell. Obviously, that's not happening for you. But having a power cell gives you access to turbocharge, gives you access to some play lines that you might not have normally had. If you build your deck around it, having access to power cell also means you could potentially crack it to a Sable Remnant and then swing with a Sable Remnant. So it's actually quite a meaningful difference to have a Backup Charger with a power cell over a Tengu. But having a Tengu means that in this format, if you get fogged, if someone Nias you, if someone Snow Whites you, they say, hey, you're not leveling up this turn, you can say, sure, no problem. I'm just gonna take an off turn, I'm just gonna Tengu, and I'm just gonna get my influence back anyways. So I like Tengu here. However, this is one of those flexible slots where I can see someone cutting it if they don't want to play with it, or if they want to play with something like a Nullifying Lantern main board, for example. Lux Map is another one of those cuttable cards that I will probably never cut just because it allows that mindset that when I play that Serene Spirit of Fire and I see way too many yellow cards in my hand, I'm feeling really comfortable just shipping them to the bottom of my deck because I know that later in the game, if I resolve a Luxurious map and I can in-cap any Fracturize targeting it, I can get those yellow cards back, I can reshuffle my deck, and I can essentially reset my deck in a way that allows me to start scaling up to late game. So I really like having Luxurious map just so that I can actually have like easier glimpses with Serene's Fire. Right now we're running Grand Crusader's Ring, although I will say almost every format devolves into some kind of a broken strategy where we really want Quicksilver Grail, whether it's Quicksilver Grail into Safeguard Amulet to protect against spell damage wombo combo, or it's a Quicksilver Grail to tuck in a Nullifying Lantern to stop fire rending flame effects, to stop water mill effects like polar depths. Eventually, later in the format, I do expect to switch this out for Quicksilver Grail, but for now, Grand Crusader's Ring is the play. When you're in an open meta, being able to see your main board options, being able to see more of your deck means that you have a higher chance of doing well against unexpected strategies. So the way I see it is you have kind of your Luxem package, you have a lot of draw options. These are off-turn options. This is going for game option, but Grand Crusader's Ring also fills that niche where say you have 2 Lightweaver's Assault and you want to be able to swing for game, but you really can't right now, and you have 8 cards in hand. On your turn, you can materialize the Grand Crusader's Ring, you pop it, you have 9 cards in hand, you draw for turn, that's 10 cards in hand, you reveal your 2 Lightweavers dealing 4 damage, then you can Lightweaver combo at any time after that in order to deal 16 damage, and that's usually 20 damage, enough to knock off anyone for game. Insignia the Kohazi is an interesting one. Now, Insignia has been one of the best cards in our deck for the longest time because it does 2 things. One is you can play it just to use it and pay cost, and that's enough to just start drawing off gleaming cards, dealing damage off your Weaver's Assaults, to heal off the Luxem sites. You want to be able to do these things without needing to invest an actual card at fast speed to put your cards down from hand into memory. But now that we have the Rile package, Insignia is a little bit less useful nowadays. We run lower counts of Thieving Cut, which also means that we don't have to have as much prep generation so that we can resolve Striking Illuminance. I actually see Insignia potentially being cut in the future if deck lists make it so that this Rile Specter package is just strong enough that we don't need to have additional sources of putting cards down to memory. However, in testing, I have found that I have sorely missed Insignia whenever I have cut it from my list. It's not just the amount of prep that you generate a game, it's when you have the prep available. And I find if I'm being pressured with early game planet explosives at all, the second I go to 3, I can't resolve a Striking Luminance immediately. But when I have an Insignia, I can just materialize this, pay, and then Striking Luminance on that turn that I make that prep counter. Right now, I think it's too important to cut. It's the glue that allows our deck to work, but I do see it being cut in later builds of our list, potentially. Lastly, we have our 2 kind of best quote-unquote meta flexible options. Safeguard Amulet and Terrafring essentially each provide you 1 turn of living, and 1 turn of living in a Luxem deck is a lot because each turn you get free resources in the form of heals from Luxem site, in the form of damage of Lightweaver's Assault. And being able to just take a turn, say, hey, you're not killing me this turn, or you're not going to be able to go through both Terrafring and my hand in order to kill me, means that it's probably the first thing that you materialize, honestly, half the time when you go to 3. Safeguard Amulet, again, does the same thing as Terrafring for different decks, but I do see a format or a time in the format when we choose one or the other. Some people are already cutting Safeguard Amulet. I can see a time in the format when we cut Terrafring, but more likely than not, we'll keep one of them in the side so that we can just switch between them as needed, depending on the matchup. And that kind of rounds out the material deck. We're going to jump into the main deck right now. Starting off with our main deck, we have the most important card in our deck, which is Dungeon Guide. Whenever you're glimpsing with your Serene Spirit, this is the card that you want to see. You want to see 1 Dungeon Guide throughout the course of the game. You want to resolve it so that not only do you save the 1 cost of not leveling to 3 with 3 cards, but leveling to 3 with 2 cards, you also get your level 3 earlier, meaning that when you Dungeon Guide to 3, on your next turn, you can materialize a backup charger or a Tengu, and then immediately pay cost, draw into memory, and then start revealing cards like that. If you level up manually, oftentimes you might not have the influence in order to level up, and in response to Zander's effect, you can pay for fast speed effects and then start revealing. It's sometimes difficult to do so. I find that when you manually level up to Zander, you're kind of in a more pressured game state where you might have needed to spend cards early game, and in that particular period of time, you might not have the influence to just pay for fast speed, juggle knives or whatnot. So more often than not, you really want to see Dungeon Guide. Interestingly, in this format, if water unique allies become more of a thing, when Nia's naming Zander 2, where Snow White is stopping us from leveling up, I do see a world in which you might want to resolve Dungeon Guide just to get to 2. Just to Dungeon Guide to 2, Dungeon Guide to 3, it's not a terrible play. I try not to do that, but sometimes that's an option. And it's really good to know that even when you're being taxed, even when you're being fogged in a way that stops you from leveling efficiently, having a Dungeon Guide to 2 is not a terrible option. It is an option we can take. But always glimpse for your Dungeon Guides, the most important card in our deck. In the past, Luxem players know that we run full Creative Shock because it's probably the strongest fire card for our particular playstyle. Being able to draw to and discard a card is crazy, even if we don't get the class bonus of 2 damage, we're not a mage. Being able to Creative Shock and then discard, say, a Fast Care is a +1 because you've spent three cards to cast Creative Shock, which replaces itself. But in the process, you've discarded a float. That float is going to translate into a quote-unquote free level up to level 1, or helping to pay for the cost of leveling to 2. So whenever you resolve a Creative Shock discarding float, that's a +1. In our new modern deck list, we are also running the Rile package, meaning that we actually want 8 float that includes Undying Dreams. I have seen deck lists run the Evercurrent Raider card. It is a water card, but it is a Specter card that's floating memory. I tested it at 4. I actually did like Evercurrent Raider at 4. It did not brick for me, but I don't have enough games and testing to know how bad it would be if I did brick. But I also know that, you know, if you play hundreds of games with this deck, you will brick at some point, and Evercurrent Raider is probably the worst brick in the game. So I can see a world we cut it down to 2, maybe even to 1 or 0. But as of right now, I'm currently testing with 3 Fast Cure, if not 4 Fast Cure, and 4 Undying Dreams. What's interesting about Undying Dreams is that it's actually a very strong card in itself. You can actually Undying Dreams targeting your Liminal Guide. Your Liminal Guide becomes a 3/5 for that turn, meaning you can trade with 2 3s. You can actually start removing allies with it, like just with the Liminal Guide and the Undying Dreams. You can also, if you level up and you make a Liminal Guide, it becomes ephemeral. You can Undying Dreams in your pre-recollection, targeting your Liminal Guide. It becomes a 3/5 for that turn. You can just start swinging at your opponent. That's 3 damage worth of pressure. If you're also revealing Luxem, that's like 3 damage from Liminal Guides, 2 damage for each Lightweaver's assaults. It is a lot of damage that can potentially come out of Undying Dreams. So in Luxem, we have come out of formats where we're just trying to find the best fast speed floats. We have played Exercise Curses in the past, but now we have float that just feel good to play and resolve. Fast Cure is kind of a float that saves you if you're up against early damage, early aggro, and if you can resolve a Fast Cure, if you can find that opportunity where they might have backup charger against you, and you can Fast Cure and heal some damage, that might be enough to swing the game in your favor, and you can start turning the corner and attacking from there. So right now, this is kind of a safe float package. I do see ourselves play testing with 9 or 10 float, but for now, there's just way too many things we want to fit in the deck that having 8 float as traditional is kind of where everyone's head is at the moment. This package is actually quite large, as you can see. 4 Dungeon Guide, 4 Liminal Guide, 4 Creative Shock, and as you can assume, 4 Rile the Abyss. This means that we are investing 24 cards into our engine of just drawing, discarding, and leveling efficiently, which is a huge amount of deck space. I thought at the beginning of the format that potentially censor could be an issue because now that we're investing so much space towards our engine, more than usual, if someone censors us, they'll basically say, hey, you're not going to get value out of the 24 cards in your deck that you wanted to get value out of. But what I noticed in practice is that we don't really care about censor. If they censor us, we'll juggle knives to 2, we'll create a shock on their end step, we'll manually go to 3, and we'll just ignore Liminal Guide. We can put Liminal Guide in as cost to pay for Creative Shock or Rile the Abyss. We can use all our float as cost. Like, it doesn't really hamper us as much as other decks because we're an entire engine deck where we just want to play game at neutral. We want to play game at like without going influence neutral, and we can do so very efficiently. So censor doesn't hurt us as much, although it does slow us down. I've won games where I've been censored, and I end my game and I look at like 3 float in my grave with 2 Liminal Guides in the bin. I'm like, well, it would have been nice if I could resolve them, but also at the same time, I did win. Like, I was able to survive the pressure. I was able to go to 3. It's not a death sentence. So some players are running Reduced to Ash. They might be running 3 Reduced to Ash I've seen. I personally played 2 Reduced to Ash and 1 Vervocan Acolyte. But I actually would say you could try just ignoring censor and playing around it. This is a 24 card package, and it does hurt when you can't play some of these cards. Make it 25 of Turbocharge, just because if you're running backup charger for the power cell, having access to an additional draw 2 card is always really, really nice. I say this is a really compact engine, even though it's really big. It's very lean, is the way I think about it, because none of these cards are bad cards in their own right. You can always just play a Liminal Guide by itself and just start swinging as well, just to start clearing board. So not a terrible package. So that is our 25 card engine. Let's go into our core. This is nothing new to a Luxem player. 4 Lightweaver's Assault. Our main win con, it's very difficult to close games without Lightweaver's Assault. For Gleaming Cut, this is our high roll card. If we can resolve multiple Gleaming Cuts in a game, we are so above influence compared to our opponent. And if we're also resolving the Rile package, we're like crazy high influence compared to them. So you might be sitting at 10 to 13 cards, they might be sitting at 6 to 8. It just depends on how high your high roll is. Luxem Sight. This is the card that you want to see against aggro, against allies. If you can stick 2 or 3 Luxem Sight against allies, it's almost a hopeless game for them. Like, they can draw it out, you can draw it out, but like you will win in the end if you have Luxem Sights and access to like 1 Light Ooze Assault, because even if they do something crazy, like they super buff the Shimmer Cloak, they crack Power Cell, they swing, and then they wake it up and they try to swing again, you can just say, okay, in response to all of that, I'm just going to Light Ooze Assault, reveal my Luxem Sights, heal up some damage, maybe even clear and disrupt your combo at the same time. It's very difficult for those decks to come back once you actually stick Luxem Sights. Right now, I'm running 3 Excalibur, 3 Striking Luminance, and 2 Uncover the Plot. However, I do see a world where I cut 1 Excalibur and 1 Striking Luminance, and I go down to 18. It's just we are fiending for deck slots right now, and it's very difficult to cut from various parts of our deck. So I feel like 18 is the minimum that we can run the Luxem Core. We will never run less than the full amount of Light Ooze Assault, Gleaming Cut, and Luxem Sight. I think we should never run less than 2 Striking Luminance, because seeing 1 Striking Luminance and 1 Light Ooze Assault means that you will be able to swing for game at some point if you can make an opportunity for yourself. And having 1 Striking Luminance means that you just aren't seeing this consistently enough. Having 2 Striking Luminance, you can see it enough because you have a lot of draw, but it's actually not that many copies. Having 3, you kind of start breaking a little bit, but the thing about Striking Luminance is that having more Luxem in hand is not a death sentence, it's not bad, because when you resolve Striking Luminance Light Ooze Assault, you will reveal your memory twice, and even having a dead Striking Luminance in memory means that you go resolve, and it'll contribute 2 damage to your combo kill. So if you have 1 Striking Luminance in hand and Light Ooze Assault and you're ready to kill, and you have 2 dead Striking Luminance in your hand, they're not really dead at that point because they're contributing 2 damage each. So that's like saying like I'm holding up like 2 shocks in my hand. Like they're contributing real damage even as dead cards. So as far as dead cards go, having too many Luxem is not bad, but you have to get to 3. And the way we get to 3 is by actually surviving the early game, is by actually resolving our tech cards, is by actually getting to our dungeon guide. And for that, we have Juggle Knives. So Juggle Knives is part of what I call the Assassin Neutral package. I've seen players cut Juggle Knives for other cards like Enchanted Fit. I've seen some players reduce Juggle Knives to 3 or 2. I personally reduce Juggle Knives to 2 as well for testing, but I think Juggle Knives is the best card to level with, because if you are not being pressured, you can just Juggle Knife on your opponent's end step, level to 2, with the 2 cards that you paid for, whatever 2 are the weakest cards in your hand, trigger Deft Executor, and bring back Juggle Knives, and then play it. You can also play another card, any other card, as long as you have influence, as long as you have cards in memory, level to 2, in response to level 2 trigger, play Juggle Knives. It allows you to just churn through your deck more quickly, but it also allows you to just deal ping damage. If you're going through the line where you Juggle Knives on your opponent's end step, Deft Executor, Juggle Knives again, you're doing 2 damage. And that's not a small amount of damage, because 2 damage from Juggle Knives and maybe 3 damage from Thieving Cut, that's 5 damage. 5 damage means that you just need a little bit of ping from Light Ooze Assaults in order to just fully combo someone out. Like, the damage really adds up over time, and people just don't really think about it because like, oh, you're not playing allies, you're not really playing a threatening board. That's true. But if they allow damage to stick from Juggle Knives, if they allow damage to stick from Thieving Cut, when you level to 3, you might just end the game right then and there because you have access to Striking Luminance. And you can just say, hey, I have 8 cards in hand, boom, 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 10 damage, 10 damage plus 2x, where x is the amount of Luxem in my hand, you're dead. Anyways, Thieving Cut. Some players are cutting this down to 1. The ratio here is between Thieving Cut and Planted Explosive. Some players run 2-1 ratio. Some players run 2 Planted and 1 Thieving Cut. Some people even just run 2-2, 2-2-2. Ultimately, the reason I'm on this ratio is because I have a lot of ally players at my locals. Thieving Cut is just amazing against allies because if you can actually resolve this, it's like it goes neutral. So you haven't really expended resources other than your prep counter in order to completely get rid of one of their resources. And if they try to interact with it and they say, okay, well, I'm going to deny you the Thieving Cut draw, I'm going to stop you from doing so, that sucks, that feels bad, but also they went 1 card down and you went 1 card down and a prep counter down. It's not the end of the world, but this applies a lot of pressure. This helps reset tempo very easily. So I personally like Thieving Cut a lot, but I will say Planted Explosives is probably more important in a meta where there's a lot of like weird allies that are hard to interact with. Like if the water ally player is running Kohazi Trapper and you can't really swing in with Thieving Cut, you'll need Planted Explosive. If there's a Cheshire Cat with an inner sword and you don't have a Reduce to Ash to get rid of it and they're swinging for 3 every turn, you need Planted Explosive. Keep in mind, Planted Explosive is a skill, not a spell, so it does get through Spell Shroud. If the Genbu player is choosing not to materialize a level 3 Guoja, so they can't release a level 2, and they go for game by swinging with Genbu and they fugue it, you could just say, okay, your attack stat is your defense stat now, right? Can I just explosive you and just kill your Genbu because your defense is 3? And they go, oh, yeah, I can't stop that. And then you win. Of course they can, they'll frostbind you, but then you can uncap that, but that's a different story. So right now, the Assassin skill package here is 11 cards. I run 4 in cap. I think we'll be running 4 in cap for a long time. Ever since we got Extricating Touch released, we needed to run 4 in cap, because if we get Extricating Touched and then we lose a Light Weaver's Assault, it just hampers our game plan by so much. But now it's even worse, because there's Regal Inquisitions in the meta, and if anyone resolves a Regal Inquisition against us when we have Luxem set up, we just basically lose. Like, it's not... it's a crazy card, Regal Inquisition, because what it says is, it looks at your opponent's hand and memory, you discard any amount of cards from them, any amount. So they can say every single one of your Luxem cards goes away, and then for each card discarded this way, we reveal the top card of our deck and put it into our hand, but those cards are revealed. So they know if we reveal more Luxem, what they have to play around. So once someone resolves the Regal Inquisition against us, if we let them, it's a death sentence. So Incapacitate stops that. And also our entire deck makes it so that we say, okay, I want to get to 3 faster than you. I want to kill you faster than you can kill me. By the time you draw Regal Inquisition, we're going to make it too late. So that's kind of the deck theory behind this. This particular deck is weak to Censor because I'm not mainboarding Reduce to Ash. But I'm okay with that. In playtesting, I've been able to play around Censor and still win matches, so I'm doing okay, and I feel pretty confident here. It might get more difficult if they start layering additional taxes on top of Censor, but for now, this is enough. And lastly, we have 4 Resolute Stand. This is the best card. This is the best fog we have access to. Of course, other fogs that we have available to us are Vanish from Sight. Vanish from Sight arguably is a better in-archetype fog, because what you can do is you can Vanish from Sight and then pay cost go into 2, and when you go to Deafening Sector, you bring back Vanish from Sight, and then you Vanish from Sight again, and then you go to 3 off the cost. So Vanish from Sight, seeing an early one, means that you have a very smooth level up into an allies list, or but the thing is, you might not need it. Like, a lot of the times nowadays, I find that I just Juggle Knives to 2, immediately Dungeon Guide to 3, and I start using like really strong cards to clear the board, or I just start winning the game from there, and I haven't needed to have a fog. If you run too many fogs, what you'll find is that your deck starts to not have answers to control matchups game one where fogs are not impactful, but also that you might not need multiple fogs. It feels good having multiple fogs, but like if that second or third fog in your hand were actually an interaction piece, like in cap, it might save you more games than not against a tricky interaction. You just need to resolve a couple of fogs in order to stay alive and then go from there. However, that being said, I do feel that 4 fogs is a little bit low. I like 6. So what I'll end up doing is I'll end up cutting an end cap and a striking luminance potentially to go to 6 fogs with 2 vanish from sight. I might replace a thieving cut, one of these, with a planet explosive, just because I am seeing a lot more quote-unquote uninteractable allies in the meta, like Cheshire Cat, that I really want to blow up really early. I want to be able to blow up Arthurs before they get value out of them, and planet explosives can do that, but thieving cuts cannot, because thieving cut is slow speed, and Arthurs are usually immortal on your turn, so you couldn't blow them up if you wanted to. So that is the main board. That would be, I believe, 25 engine, 20 Luxem Core, and the rest being neutral or tech cards against the meta. Very streamlined, not crazy, nothing really crazy there, but I expect that to change a lot in the meta. My sideboard: 1 Art of War and a Quicksilver Grail. This used to be Art of War, Quicksilver Grail, and Tengu. I mean, sorry, not Tengu, and Lantern. Quicksilver Grail and Lantern in the sideboard meant that I could potentially side in both the Grail and the Lantern against Genbu. I could have the Grail and Amulet against Fractals. I could have more options where I just sided the Lantern and not the Quicksilver Grail against Kindle, Fire, Rending, Flame stacks. But I found that the meta, there is no Genbu. There's lower Genbu, there's almost no Fractals in my meta at least. So I'm like, okay, I don't need Lantern. Grail might be on the chopping block as well, but I'm keeping it here for now because I know eventually we will need Grail for whatever deck is best in format as the format progresses. Art of War has been really nice going against allies decks because it basically cuts off their ability to burst. If you can resolve like Weaver's Assault, clear their board, and then have an Art of War on board, it means that they can never really burst you down and you can take the game from there. Art of War single-handedly means that you feel a lot better going to ally lists, that if they have a line to say, I'm going to play Shimmer Cloak, I'm going to buff it, I'm going to hit you twice with it, they no longer can do that as a surprise. They'd have to plan ahead, and if you're good, you can just hold up interaction like Excalibur, and then they just can't combo you. So Art of War is really quite nice here, but we also have a really good allies matchup already, so both of these slots actually I see are available to be cut to make room for other things that we want to play. Reduce to Ash and Verrocan Acolyte are our anti-censor options. Like I said, you don't need to play around censor, but censor still hurts. And again, when you finish games and you look at the 3 floating memory and 2 liminal guides in your graveyard, say, hey, I wish I had these earlier. When you have these sideboarded in, you can actually just say, you know what? If you're not pressuring me enough, I'm just going to backup charger, I'm going to Tengu, I'll find one of these 3 cards eventually. I'll crack your censor and I can start using all of my resources again. But the reason why this is not main board right now is because being able to say confidently, hey, I can backup charger, I can Tengu, I can find these cards. You can't say that when you're being pressured. The matchups where you want to see this the most are also the matchups where you won't be able to draw enough to see them. So unless we're running 4, which I don't recommend, it's kind of like catch-22. So I'd say, okay, running this in the side has felt really good for me. I love being able to bring them in as a decision, but it's a proactive decision. I don't want to have it in my main board all the time. What's also really cool is Reduce to Ash. This is a good card, like independently of censor, because late game, everyone's going to eventually, I'm playing against Luxem, I'm going to make a Quicksilver Grail, I'll tuck a Safeguard Amulet underneath it. Well, when you have like 13, 15 cards in your hand, you can say, okay, on your end step, I'll reduce to Ashes Quicksilver Grail. They'll pop it, they'll make an amulet. Then you can say, okay, I'll Excalibur your amulet. And they say, I can't stop you. And then on the next turn, you kill them. So reduce to Ash is good for popping Safeguard Amulet. Reduce to Ash is also good for popping Mirror. If your opponents say, oh, you're playing Luxem, I'm going to side in a Nullifying Mirror, and then that will keep my cards in hand. I'll say, oh, no, you don't. I'll reduce to Ash your Nullifying Mirror, and I'm going to tax your hand next turn anyways. So reduce to hand on its own is a good card. For Rook Acolyte, I like it because at level 3, you can actually play this, pop something, and then attack and remove an ally. It's just a very high value card. I kind of see it almost like an Exalted card because it's most live when you're level 3, but even when you're earlier, if you're playing against Water Diana, for example, all of the bows have Spell Shroud, so they can't be reduced, and they can't be Excalibur, but you can Acolyte them. If Water Diana becomes a threat in the meta, I can see myself running more for Rook and Acolyte, but for now, I think this ratio is fine. I'm happy with this. I'm happy to play with this. I think ultimately, I will definitely keep at least 2 reduced to Ash, and I may keep 1 or more of Rook and Acolytes, but for now, I would say my strongest picks here, Art of War to reduce to Ash, probably not Grail in a sideboard, may or may not be Rook and Acolyte. Continuing my sideboard, I run 2 Regal Inquisition. This is my answer to other Luxem decks, but this is also my answer to any control deck. If you play against Tristan, for example, and you're doing an in-cap war, you basically say, okay, I'll Regal Inquisition you. Do you have in-cap? If you have in-cap, you better in-cap this, or I'll see all of your hand, I'll take your in-caps anyways. So this forces an in-cap from them, meaning that you now have more in-caps, so you can in-cap their mastermind scheme. And if you can stop them from gaining prep counters, it's very difficult for a Tristan player to kill you. Because they can't really go for the ally swing strategy when you have that many fogs in your deck. They have to be forced to go for a Shadow Strike kill, and if you take away their ability to make prep counters earlier on and you stop them from making the mastermind scheme plays, they're kind of dead in their tracks. So Regal Inquisition, very strong card, although I will say I haven't play tested this enough. 2 Vanish from Sight. This is probably going in the main, to be very honest with you, to save space. So right now I'm looking at maybe these cards. This might just be another fog. I might start playing Underfire. Underfire is an interesting one because right now everyone's playing Crystallized Destiny, as am I. But the problem with Crystallized Destiny is that when you resolve Crystallized Destiny, they can say, okay, it resolves. Now I'll ping you for 1 damage with another card from my hand, and suddenly the bubble pops, and then they can just swing for game anyways. If you have Underfire, it's a lot more difficult to interact with, because even if they allow Underfire to resolve, if they're going both Seal and Diana want to swing, and those are the 2 new champions of the set, and I do expect both of them to have good builds down the line. If you can resolve an Underfire against them, it becomes a lot more difficult for them to actually kill you. And if you're having trouble with Diana because they have True Sight, you can potentially run more Varrock and Acolyte against that as well. So I do see Underfire as a option down the line, but not right now. I think when it comes to sideboard, I'm really happy with Crystallized Destiny and Art of War. I'm really happy with 2 Reduced to Ash. And I'm really happy with 2 Regals. I want to play some sort of Fog, and I want to play some sort of Blanche. But as a generic sideboard going into the format, I think this is pretty strong. Again, I haven't had many issues starting off this format. I haven't really found flaws in the deck that I thought I can't overcome this or were truly detrimental. But as of right now, I think what I'll be doing and what I would hope that others are testing is just playing with the ratios. I'm probably dropping my Luxem Core down to 18, cutting Excel and Striking. I really like Juggle Knife at 4, but I might cut them to make room for something else, going down to 3. Thieving, I don't like it being a 1-of, but it does work as a 1-of. Planted, same thing. I think we might need more Planted as the aggro format becomes stronger. I think 4 Resolute Stand is just too strong. it's good. Like right now with Ensol, what they can do is they have that new regalia that makes their Ensol cannot be incapped. It makes it unpreventable. Not unpreventable. Like it cannot be countered. And you say, okay, I'm not gonna counter your Ensol. I'm just gonna resolute stand. So then they can't kill you anyways. Right now, I think what everyone's trying to do is to try to figure out the ratios in order to justify this huge 25 card investment of the Liminal Guide Rile Specter package, which is crazy strong. But we're still learning what kind of ratios that we want to be running into this. So I'm really excited to share this deck profile because it's kind of a benchmark to say, hey, it's doing really well at the beginning of this meta, but I don't know what it's going to look like in the middle or the end of the meta. So if you look at my other video, I did do a overview of the best Luxem results in the past 2 weeks. And if you want to learn more about why specific players make specific card choices, please watch that video. It's a little bit of a long one. I'm a little bit of just ranting through half of it, but hopefully it will be insightful to you. And with that, I hope you enjoyed this deck profile, and I'll see you next time.